I decided to buy some Z-scale stuff, as it's one of the few scales that I've never really touched before, as from a distance it's always been pretty intimidating. But as fate would see it, eventually I would buy myself a loop of track, as well as 2 engines to run on that track, and pretty quickly I was hooked. And slowly I've been building my collection up since, getting not only some more track, but a hopper as well. Only one at the moment, the others haven't come in the mail yet, but we're gonna roll with it. Since now that I've acquired Z-scale stuff for myself, and actually have a first-hand experience with it, I had to ask myself, is Z-scale really as intimidating as it looks? And is it something that others should pursue as well? And that's what we're gonna talk about today, starting off with taking a look at the locomotives themselves. As you probably expected, the boxes that these two come in are pretty small, and at first admittedly scared me, as this first box, which you can see here, doesn't actually protect the engine very well, and we all know how the post can be sometimes. But thankfully he wasn't missing any parts, and though it took me a little bit to figure out, ran amazingly as well. And looking at this locomotive, I'm nothing but impressed. It's made by Marklin, and though the box seemed shifty at first, overall just like the engine was quite beautiful, featuring this illustration on the top and a fake wood print around the locomotive, which doesn't look too bad either. But getting back to the engine, I have to say I'm impressed with the level of detail that Marklin has provided. Almost every part of the engine is detailed, and the printing on the side, though hard to read, is done extremely well, and all around I find it hard to complain about this engine. The back of the tender has 3 molded lamps which don't light up, but that's hard to complain about given how small this is, and everything from the paintwork to the lining has been applied very carefully, altogether making this one hell of a model, and operationally it's had no issues. For those wondering, the tender actually connects through this hook and loop system on the back wheel. You can also see the motor itself, which is stored here in the cab. Both are done pretty discreetly and don't take much away from the model itself. I mean, it even has lights. There's only so much bad I can really say. And before anyone asks, though this engine is very small, it also has quite a bit of weight to it, so you don't really have to worry about it flying away or getting blown over. But as nice as this engine is, it is not my favorite one. That would be this guy here, which is also another Marklin locomotive, but one who I think looks a lot better and came packaged better too, even though the packaging is a bit more boring and only features an illustration of the locomotive on the front. And though the box may be a bit boring, I find the locomotive anything but. I personally don't have many German locomotives, but I've always enjoyed the design of them, and this engine is no exception. And in the detail department, Marklin saw no exception either, as just like the last engine, this one is packed with it. Also featuring false back lamps, but beautifully molded details, and decal prints that are so small that you can't even read them, but Marklin still put them there, and I personally appreciate that. This engine also lights up and is quite brighter than the last one as well. So yeah, pretty quickly this one became my favorite. But can you really blame me? I mean, look how nice he is. The front of his tender even has detail. And while we're on that subject, the back of the locomotives themselves are what hold the motor. So unfortunately there's no detail inside of that, but it's not very noticeable unless you're looking at it, and they make up for it with the tender. Altogether, it really is a lovely model. And now that I've actually tried Z-scale out, I really have to say that it's not as hard as it looks. When you put these models next to N and HO scale, there's a very clear difference in size, and that normally is what scares people away from Z-scale. But not only are these models jam-packed full of detail, but super easy to operate as well. What you're seeing now is a small controller that's also made by Marklin, and powers the entire set with a D battery. The only downside being that there's no throttle, so once you set the engines in forward or reverse, they just keep going, and you can't really control the speed of it. But if all you're wanting to do is power the track easily like I was, this is definitely a controller to consider, since all you have to do is plug the track in, and once that's done, you're ready, and can operate your trains however you see fit. Also note that this running session took place on a windy day, so hopefully that'll eliminate some of your guys' fears of these just blowing away. The hopper car that you see these two pulling is also made by Marklin, and if I'm being completely honest, just as detailed as the engines, featuring beautifully applied decaling on either side, plenty of molded detail, and even a coal load. So altogether I enjoy this wagon a lot. I also enjoy Marklin's coupling system, which sadly looks a bit bulky, but once coupled holds very well. And now that we've said all of that, let's see these two in action. In my opinion, Z-scale has to be one of the most fun scales that I've ever had the chance to model. But with that being said, I don't recommend this scale to a beginner, as these models oftentimes can be very intricate, as well as expensive. But if you're like me and have a general idea of what you're doing, Z-scale can be very fun, and is extremely portable. So should you ever want to take these models on the go, you actually have the opportunity to. And I myself at this point have some plans for Z-scale. So if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, as I can't wait to show you guys what exactly I have in store. Just go ahead and call me the Think Controller. And with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.